So, good morning, good day, good evening, and good night, wherever you are in the world. We have participants online from nearly every continent, and we are happy to have you here and that you take your time to learn more about the theory of constraints. Our presenter today is Rami Goldratt. Rami is CEO of Goldratt Consulting, headquartered in Israel, and obviously represented all around the world. He is recognized worldwide as a leading theory of constraints authority. Just to remember you, this is a part of a small series of sessions with Rami. The last one, we had a session on breaking inertia, outperforming your constraints. We had another one on bringing forecast closer to reality last week. And today, the Seductive Seven. What is this all about? The theory of constraints system approach is to look at the business as a whole and understand what constrains the business growth. And typically there are one or two constraints, one in the creation of value, one in the execution of its delivery. And the approach is, theory of constraints approach is, focus on elevating these constraints. These are the leverage points that can help the business to achieve a jump in performance. But there are current practices and beliefs, these are the Seductive Seven, that confuse our attention. And today we have Rami here, and he will use real-life examples to show how to avoid those Seductive Sevens and how to identify the core problem, the force that keeps pulling you back to where you are and prevents you from making the next jump. So, Rami, it's your turn now.
Thank you very much.
I'll hand over the presentation to you. So.
Okay. So hello, everybody. Welcome to our third short webinar on various general subjects of TOC. As you've heard, this topic today will be on the subject matter of the Seductive Seven, which are typical easy fix solutions that we're trying to, that seduce us, tempt us to implement in order to tackle problems that we have in our area of responsibility. And it's very conventional solutions that we are rushing to implement, trying to fix problems that we have. But nevertheless, very often, these do not solve, not only that they do not solve the local problems that we have, they obviously do not contribute to the system as a whole. So I hope at the end of the presentation, you will better understand how to deal with these Seductive Seven that intuitively we feel that we need to do. Obviously, we're not saying you should never do them, any one of these. You should do them, but as part of a holistic solution, not on their own merit. But let's take it slowly and build it as we go. So in order to build the framework to better understand the Seductive Seven, let's start from the base. I think that any one of you who is a bit familiar of TOC probably heard that the essence of the theory is focus. My father was once asked if you can summarize TOC, theory of constraints, in one word, what would it be? And he said the word will be focus. And his belief was that the ultimate constraint, and in TOC when we say constraint, we mean this force or resource that really governs the performance of the system. He said that the ultimate constraint is not cash or a machine or a special skill or even the market. The ultimate constraint is management attention. It is us. It's our ability to get results dealing with complexity, uncertainty, conflicting requirements that we need to balance. And therefore, if that's the ultimate constraint, management attention, we better know how to exploit it, how to manage it better. And already in the book, The Goal, which brought TOC to the world in the mid-80s, if you read it, you notice that actually the main drive that wastes management attention is coming from very good intentions. Basically, my father said in the book that it's people have a tendency to try and improve anything that can be improved. And this tendency, although it's very good, and it does mean that people, when they go to work, they want to fix problems that they have. They're not just, complacent. But this tendency many times works against us. Now, as you can all see, I just put a very easy to understand process flow on this slide. You have 4 resources that feed each other, and you see how many parts per hour each resource can do. If I would ask you what is the maximum number of products that this line can do, I assume all of you will tell, well, per hour, it's going to be 2 because we have a bottleneck. Okay, that's the essence of the theory. So, but if our tendency is to try and improve anything that can be improved, then you see that many times, actually, our improvement efforts will not be on this 3rd resource, on the bottleneck, but will be on other resources. And it's because they're not working perfectly, because we can improve them. We can cause this resource that does 5 parts per hour to do even 10 parts per hour. And if we can improve it, why not? The problem is that when management attention is a constraint, when our attention is spread thin across many improvement initiatives, we eventually do not improve where we really need to improve. There is a reason why a lot of the improvement efforts are not on the bottleneck. It's because there is a reason why the bottleneck is a bottleneck. It's difficult to improve it. Okay, so management attention must focus on what is really holding us back. The limitation that it is dictating our ability to achieve more of the goal. Now, I draw a very simple process line, but obviously the same thing happens when we look at the system as a whole, let's say on the company level. Here's a real example from one of our customers, which is a very large prefabricated home builder. And you can see the flow of the business, of the work in front of you. Here you have the sales department that interact with the customers and take their orders, and basically taking their specs of the home that they want to build, moving it to the design department, then it moves to the production design, to the production of all the different parts, and then assembled and constructed on site. Now, when we've met them, the main problem they had was that their sales were stagnating. And we looked at the number of initiatives that are going on to improve the company, and we saw multiple initiatives everywhere. Okay, so if it was the sales department, they were busy implementing a sophisticated customer relationships management system, and they were going into increasing the variety of the designs for different market segments, trying to cater to more sales. The CRM system was trying to make sure that they are improving the conversion rate. And when we looked at the design departments, they were so busy. They were just trying to increase the resources of the department. They tried to move to standardized design, which made a big conflict with the sales department, obviously, so they can complete designs much faster with less rework. And they were also busy implementing a new IT system, trying to smoothen and synchronize these different designs in the attempt to try and reduce the reworks and improve the lead time of design, which took longer and longer. Production, they were implementing lean. They were trying to have better procurement of materials that they sometimes took too long, especially when the different designs the variety increased, so different materials has to be used. They were implementing some new machines in order to speed up the production because customers were complaining about the lead times. When we looked at the construction, so they tried to implement the latest project management IT tools, trying to synchronize everything, to rationalize vendor logistics, so they can better, receive a more smooth receive of all the different parts from the different vendors on time, etc., etc. And this is just examples. Now, these initiatives were not new. They are going on for the last 2 years, with little results at the company level. People extremely busy, each department dealing with the symptoms they have, real burning symptoms. So people are not ignoring the problems they have. The problem is that many times you rush to implement solutions and you're not focusing where you should focus. It didn't take too long when we gathered everybody, all the managers from all the various departments in one room, and understanding where is the bottleneck in this business, to understand that it is in the design department. Okay, so the design department is getting orders from sales, start to work with them, so the capacity is reduced. Then they release work to the production design, and many times it comes back because they need to do some changes. Therefore, the capacity is consumed even more. And when it moves to production and it moves back again, each time it moves back, the design is busier and busier with a lot of rework and customers that change their mind, and at the same time, new orders that are coming from sales. And because it became a bottleneck, it was so overloaded, it didn't do a good job, declining customer service. As a result, it leads to a drop in market opportunity, etc. It didn't take too long to agree on it and then to focus on the main improvement initiative on the design department. And as you know, in TOC, with the 5 focusing steps, the moment you decide how to better exploit your constraint, your bottleneck, and we're not going to go into it now because that's the subject matter of project management at TOC way. But the moment you understand how to exploit it, you need to synchronize all the other departments. Step number 3, subordinate everything else to the above decision. Synchronize every other department to so you can exploit better the constraint. So it's not that the improvement should be only in design, not at all. A lot of the improvement efforts, for example, were in the sales department. So they bring the right full kit for the design department to reduce the rework. And a lot of effort was made on the construction side in order to make sure that the less rework is coming back. All of this is with the focus to improve the overall performance of the system. My father wrote in the book, The Goal, productivity is the act of bringing a company closer to its goal. Every action that brings a company closer to its goal is productive. Every action that does not bring a company closer to its goal is not productive. Now, but why we're so busy with so many actions that not necessarily bring us closer to the goal? That's because when we have problems, we feel the urge to try and deal with them and solve them. We don't want to wait for a holistic analysis. But nevertheless, because now our attention is spread so thin across so many improvement initiatives, we're not focusing where we should. So, you know, many times when I speak with managers, they tell me, Rami, you know, we know that we have to focus, but where? How can we focus when we are so overloaded with so many multiple initiatives? What, you want us to stop everything? If I will draw a curve of the waste of management attention relative to the number of assignments that we're working on, we will get a U curve. So if I'm not working on too many assignments, there is lack of work. We're not utilizing our management attention as it should. But there is a point of time that as we are growing the number of assignments we're working on, we are so overloaded, we don't even have the time to know where to focus. If I would ask you as management, where do you think you find yourself on this U curve? I think you'll agree with me that quite often we are at the right extreme side of this U curve, totally overloaded. And if you agree with me on this, it means something very important. It means that basically we have to climb down from this extreme in order to enable us to focus on the right things. Basically, as my father said, the first step to obtain focus is to have the courage to decide what to stop doing. So then we can identify and exploit the leverage points, the constraint. Focus, he said, focus starts with what not to do. Not with what to do, but with what not to do. If you want to be practical. Because if I'll come to you now and tell, or let's say this example of the prefabricated that say you have to improve your design department, they know this. So it's not the case. It's really about what to stop doing, then to free our attention to know where to focus and how. And the subject matter of this presentation, which we call the Seductive Seven, is aimed exactly on this topic, to give you some tips and tools tomorrow morning without an overall analysis of the business, but just tomorrow morning to give you some tips to enable you to stop doing some activities or initiatives that may give you the feeling that you're making a progress, that you're taking actions to deal with problems you have, but this is just an illusion of progress. Okay, and I hope I'm not going to provoke you too much, and actually you will agree with me that these tips can help you avoid doing the wrong things. So as I said, we are calling them the Seductive Seven. I'm going to use in this presentation a presentation that was given by an amazing lady called Kristen Cox. You can view this presentation on YouTube. She is the executive director in the state of Utah in the US, responsible for all the budget of the different agencies of the government. Okay, so she needs to approve all the budgets that goes everywhere, basically like the COO of the state, if you want. And this actually means that she always needs to deal with requirements and demands coming to her desk for new initiatives requiring new budget, and she's, let's say, the gatekeeper that needs to evaluate this. So she's using this Seductive Seven as a framework, and she's applying TOC all over the states and managing the operations of the state. And she's using this framework of Seductive Seven to help her and her officers to evaluate different initiatives. So she calls them 7 solutions that give us the illusion of progress. Let's see these solutions. In order to see the first one, the first of the Seductive Seven, let us start with an example. So again, when we rush to implement a solution that directly counter a local problem that we have, we are likely to fall into the illusion of progress. We have a problem, a specific problem, a symptom in front of us, we want to deal with it, directly deal with it. That's when we may feel that we're making progress, but actually it's just an illusion. So let's understand it. I'll use an example, again, one of our customers, which is a IT unit in a very big conglomerate. And this IT unit is basically servicing all the business units of this big group of companies, providing them with IT support, IT projects, and they were greatly overloaded. Okay, so it seems like they had to deal with all the IT projects coming from regulatory changes, in addition to the trend of going digital, in addition to all these initiatives of going online. Everything came together on their desk with a very long backlog of projects and a lot of complaints by the business units. So their counteraction, trying to deal with this problem, was let's add more IT resources. And for the last several years, they were just growing rapidly, adding more and more IT resources, but somehow the problems never went away, even though they added more resources. Now, if you look at it, you understand very quickly that the added capacity, even though you add them, is dwarfed by the ever-growing queue of IT requests. So it doesn't matter how much more resources you're adding. If you're not adding enough and you cannot add enough to fulfill the demand, you'll always be a bottleneck. You'll always be a constraint. And if it's dwarfed, the added capacity is dwarfed relative to the load that you have, you're also not going to make any difference. The only way to deal with it is to look, again, more holistically and start to evaluate which projects you really need to do and which ones you're not. This is an example of the first of the Seductive Seven, which we call more money. I think one of the ways I recommend for people to learn the Seductive Seven is to imagine yourself sitting behind your desk, and one of your lieutenants come to you knocks on your door and asks for something. Okay, in this case, they ask for more money. Not because they just want more money or more resources, but because they have some problems that they feel that they need more resources. Now, did it happen that you approved such an initiative? You approved the additional resources, but the problems did not go away? Did it happen? Quite often, huh? What is the illusion? The illusion is basically that we believe when we ask for more money or more resources, basically we believe that we are already as good as we can get in optimizing all of our resources. That's why we need more. We already do the maximum with what we have. Now, you need to understand, I call it an illusion, not because I'm seeking efficiency. Even though it's in today's world, it's not bad to be very efficient. But I'm not trying to say let's squeeze whatever we can from what we have. That's not the point. The point is that the moment that we think that we are as good as we can, we will never look at the flow of work. We will never try even to see if we can do much, much more by just doing things differently. And always try just to get more resources. Now, if it was easy to increase resources, we would have done it already. So most likely there is some limitation, like a budgetary limitation, that prevents us from just adding more and more resources. So even when we get more resources, it will probably be a fraction of what we really need. Now, we may say, okay, I wanted 10 more designers, I got only 2, but it's still a progress. No, it's not, because it's dwarfed relative to the load that you really need to deal with. And because you're adding more resources, you're not even examining how you can do much better with what you have. I hope I make sense. So what is the right mindset that we recommend? Okay, the system internal friction wastes significant parts of its capacity. I will recommend always assume that the flow of work within the different departments of the company or between the vendors the company and the customers, the flow of work usually creates a lot of waste in terms of capacity because of different measurements of different departments, etc. And we recommend search for the policies that compromise the system performance and flow before you rush to add more resources. For example, in the first case I told you about, the prefabricated home, it was easy to see that if the salespeople were not rushing just to place the order, trying to secure the business, but do a full kit to really sit with the customer and understand exactly what they need, spend some more time with the customer, then a lot of the IT designs, a lot of the rework that happens will be removed. And we also saw that there were a lot of design work that was done for leads that never converted anyway. So it was not done just after the customer gave the order. So a lot of the work had to be done with the synchronization, not only with the design department on its own merit. I hope I make sense to you. So the first of the Seductive Seven was more money or more resources. Next time that someone comes to you and asks for more resources, think carefully before you're rushing to approve it. Because maybe or not maybe, for sure he's trying to solve a specific problem he has, but you need to verify that he's not just trying to counter the problem by throwing money at it. Many times it's not going to work. So I hope I didn't provoke you too much. Let's talk about the second of the Seductive Seven, which is more technology. Okay, we have a local problems, and our solution immediately is let's implement better technology and different technology. For example, the salespeople say in the prefabricated home case, let's implement a CRM software. Or the construction, let's implement project management software. In the design department, let's implement a CAD system. Okay, so everybody was trying to implement a better IT, and with the trend of going digital, it sounds very nice and give us very good feeling that we are taking the right action, the latest trends to deal with the problems we have. But how often have we implemented the technology and nevertheless the problems did not go away? What is the illusion here? The illusion here, and again, I'm not saying you should never implement a new technology, obviously, especially me, I'm coming from Israel, the startup nation. So I'm not saying don't implement new technology, but before you're rushing to approve a new technology, understand that there is an assumption here. And the assumption is that we believe we need a new capability or a new tool in order to solve the problem. Who said that that's the case? I recommend whenever somebody comes and tells you that they need a new technology is first to see if the person understands the business problem, and I emphasize business, the business problem that you're trying to solve. What is the business problem you're trying to solve by having this new technology? You will be amazed to what extent sometimes we're rushing to suggest new technologies without even understanding the business problem. Many times we define the problem as not having this new technology. But this is just, tautology. Okay, why do we need this new cloud service? Because we don't have cloud service. Who said we need? What is the business problem we're trying to solve? Then, of course, we should evaluate whether this new technology addresses this business problem. Understand first what is broken with the current process. Only then determine if technology can amplify the new process. Once you understand the business problem, you will see that technology is just a tool to help you execute or amplify a new process that needs to be in place, a new process that fixes the business problem. So before you rush to the technology, and define the business problem, define the new process that you need to implement to solve this problem, and then you can ask yourself which technology can help me, and does it help me to implement this new process? Hope it makes sense. So the first of the Seductive Seven was more money. The second of the Seductive Seven was more technology. Let's view the third of the Seductive Seven, which is more reorganization. What is the illusion here? We believe the conflict between different entities will be solved if we put them under the same roof. So many times we rush to do reorganization because we feel that there is a misalignment between the authority and the resources that needs to be under this authority. So we need to reshuffle the system to bring the authority. I don't need to even ask you how often reorganization didn't fix the problems, because any experienced person knows that it creates more a mess than a solution, really. Because often reorganization is nothing but moving the problem around instead of solving it. Okay, when we rush to reorganize, we always think, oh, if we just put it under the right authority, the problem will go away. Really? The conflict is due to broken process. If we fix that process, we can get better outcomes for customers and create a win for all stakeholders within the existing structure. More money, more technology, more reorganization. The fourth of the Seductive Seven is more strategy and planning. Okay, let's go back to the drawing room. Let's create another strategy. Let's change the solution. The solution we had didn't work, didn't fix the problem. Basically, we assume that we are stuck and we need a new idea or a direction for a breakthrough. Now, sometimes we do. Again, I'm not saying that you should never do any one of these Seductive Seven. Sometimes that's right, but before you rush and do it, think twice. Because so often we are rushing to change the strategy when the problem is not the strategy. The problem is in the execution. And actually, if you don't notice it, if you're having good strategy and the problem is with execution, but instead of solving the execution problem, you're just changing the strategy all the time, come up with new ideas all the time, you're actually making the execution problem worse and worse. Not only that you're not progressing, you're intensifying your problem. because you're changing all the time the strategy without fixing the execution. Many times, good ideas get stuck in execution. Dive deep to understand the operational challenges before you're rushing to change the strategy and making the execution problem even worse by doing it. More money, more technology, more reorganization, more strategy and planning. The fifth of the Seductive Seven is more data. I can go on for ages about talking about that. Just last week when we did the webinar about bringing forecast closer to reality, so often what I see when, for example, I work with retailers planning their next season and saying, okay, we had a lot of end of season sales previously because we didn't sell what we ordered. So we need better forecasting system. So let's have more data. And they start to invest a lot of money in having sophisticated forecasting models that collect a lot of data, trying to get it accurate. And it's not so difficult to understand what good will all this data do to you when you need to order the fabric 6 months, 8 months before the season, and you only know what is selling or not 2-3 weeks into the season. Why this data will help you if you have to order so much in advance to the time that you can really get the right signal? Data is not going to help you here. We believe the more data we have, the more we will uncover reality and deepen our understanding. Maybe it's a good point to remind you something my father wrote in the book, The Haystack Syndrome. He said that there is a difference between data and information. We don't need more data. We're flooded by data. We're drowning by an ocean of data. What we need is information. And information is the answer to the question that we are asking. So don't look for more data. Start by understanding what are the right questions that you need to ask to solve your business problem, whatever it is. Then you look for data to answer these questions, which will be the information. Okay? Really put your minds into it and say, I don't want to collect more data. I have enough of it. What questions am I asking that I know if I'll get the answer to this question, I'm going to solve the business problem? I think last week I also mentioned that maybe we'll do a webinar on the subject of business innovation, coming up with the next breakthrough products or services. So over there, you will see that the process guides you first to find the right questions you need to ask in order to come up with a breakthrough product. It really starts with a different question. You call it new eyes. We need to look at reality from a different point of view, from new eyes, to ask the right questions that can guide us to come up with a breakthrough product. Okay, so always, that's in the case of innovation. You always start with new questions. Okay, like in the case of the retail example I told you, don't just ask for more data. What is the question you're trying to ask? You're trying to say, how do I minimize the end of season sale and maximize the full price selling product? That's the question. And the answer is not with forecast. You cannot have better forecast. The answer is by speeding up the supply chain and the reaction time, like I told you last week. Now you can ask what data I need in order to speed up as much as possible the reaction time. What data I need to collect to read the right signals? What data I need to collect to react very fast? Too much data breeds confusion. Data can be useful when we know what questions we are trying to answer. More money, more technology, more reorganization, more strategy and planning, more data. What is the next of the Seductive Seven? More training and communication. We believe people need more information to improve or change their behavior. Think of the last time somebody came to you and said, we need to do a training or a communication session on a certain subject. We need to train our people on something. Why do we feel that we need to do it? There must be some behavioral change that we're trying to induce, to create. Otherwise, why should we do a training, right? Now, you need to ask yourself, would training be sufficient to cause this behavioral change? Because many times, the reason why people behave in a way that you want them to change is not because of lack of knowledge, but because of some measurement that they have, or a different need that drives them to operate in a way that you want them to change. So it's not lack of information that is causing them to behave in the wrong way. And therefore, by providing this information, you may not really create the right behavioral change. You need to do something else. You need to deal with the cause that brings people to behave in a different way, in the way that you want them to change. I can give so many examples for this, but I'm sure you have enough of them in your organization. Solution. Design system that makes it natural and easy for people to make the choices and produce the results that we want. Again, for example, we were when I deal with the prefabricated home. So people told me the designers are lazy, they're not doing enough their job, they're not checking what they're doing. So we need to give them more training on how to do the design, etc. Now, these were experienced design people. I knew that the problem is not about the training. Something else is causing it. I understood immediately that there were two reasons, not immediately, but through a little bit of investigation, we understood that there were two reasons that brought this behavior that we want to change of the designers. One was the fact that they did not receive full kit from the salespeople, so they had to work almost half blind on the design request they get. And the other is that they were so overloaded and constantly bombarded with rework that is coming back to their desk that they went into what we call bad multitasking. Bad multitasking happens when you have to switch between tasks without completing any of the tasks. And when you are in a prolific bad multitasking situation, you will all the tasks that you're working on will take much longer and the quality will not be as good. And the way to eliminate bad multitasking is not by training. To come to people and say you should give enough attention to every work is not going to help them with bad multitasking. It's just going to make them more frustrated because you blame them. The only way to deal with it is to choke the release of assignments to the resources and enable them, force them basically to work only on a few items at a time. And only when they complete, you release a new assignment to them. And the way to deal with full kit is not to tell them, okay, work only on assignments that you have all the preparations done for it, ready for it, only on full kit. They know this. The reason they're working half blinded on incomplete kits is not because they're blind or stupid. It's because of the pressure to start as early as possible. If I'm not going to deal with this pressure and just going to educate them on full kit work, it's not going to solve the problem. The pressure will continue to bring them to start work as early as possible, even when they start it without all the preparations ready. I hope I make sense to you. So again, what are we talking about? Instead of don't rush for training. Many times it's not lack of information that is needed, and definitely it's not sufficient. You need first to understand what is the behavioral change that we need to create, that because of it somebody asked for training. Then think why this behavioral change, the wrong behavior is, what brought the wrong behavior, what is driving the wrong behavior. And then design a system that will help really and incentivize people to make the behavioral change, that it's easy for them to make the choices you want. Then you can do training. The next of the Seductive Seven is more accountability and assigning blame. So what is the problem? The problem is that other people are not doing their job. This is always about other people, never about ourselves, right? So we need to have better measurements for the other department because they're not doing their job. We need to demand more accountability from them. We believe other people or entities limit our ability to make an impact or change how things are done, and therefore we need to measure them better. We need to demand better accountability from them. Now, you may be right, but I still call it an illusion of progress, because even if you're right and other people don't necessarily do their job, the moment that's the way you think, the moment you think like that, you are turned into a victim. There's nothing I can do, I'm perfect. Okay, the problem is that other people don't do their job. Now, of course, when you have this phenomena, what normally you see in the organization is cross finger pointing, right? Everybody are pointing at another person. We're in TLC, we're trying to encourage people to look at it differently. So don't rush to blame other people and to demand better accountability from them. Start always by looking how you can change your area of responsibility in a way that will be a catalyst for the change across the whole system. Okay, what you can change in your domain that other people, once they see it, they will go and implement the right procedures. So my friends, what you see here are the Seductive Seven. Let me explain again what I mean by that, and we can then conclude our presentation. So I'm trying to give you some tips tomorrow morning, not to fall into the illusion of progress. Basically to feel that you're very busy and to feel that you are taking actions to deal with problems you have, but nevertheless, you make little progress. Now, you make little progress because you're not tackling the right problem, okay, the constraint. Now, one way for me to be able to teach you how to do it is to tell you, okay, let's understand how you do a full analysis of the business to find the constraint, the core problem, if you wish, and then to address it. But many times we're so busy with so many initiatives, we don't have the time to really take a moment and to do this analysis. And even if we had the time, we feel that it's not going to help tomorrow. So first we need to reduce the noise. And for this, we use the framework of the Seductive Seven. Okay, we say, okay, so for tomorrow morning, in order to really evaluate whether you're making a progress or just falling to the illusion, a lot of these initiatives you're doing will fall into one of these Seductive Seven. More resources, different technology, more reorganization, strategic planning, more data, more training, more accountability, different measurements, one of these Seductive Seven. And before you rush to do it, you need to make sure that you're not just trying to counter a local problem with a local symptom, if you wish, by rushing to implement a specific, an easy fix solution that may look like you're making a progress but doesn't make a difference. Before you do it, take a moment and follow the tips I gave you for each one of these. Okay, more resources. Wait a minute. Is it really the problem with are we really maximizing what we have before we ask for more resources? Not in order to be more efficient, but in order to make sure that if I add more resources, because I can never add enough, but if I add enough resources, not as much as you want, but what I can, it will be sufficient for you to solve the problem. More technology, what is the business problem you're trying to solve with this technology? Will the technology really amplify this new process that is needed to implement, to solve the business problem? More reorganization, let's just make sure we're not moving the problem around. More strategic planning, is the problem the strategy or the execution? More data, which question do we need to answer? What is the problem? Only then we need to think what data I need in order to answer this question. More training and communication. What is the behavioral change that we want to create, to induce? How do we design system to induce this behavior, this right behavior? Okay, and then I'll think if training is needed. More accountability. I assume you always talk about accountability of other departments. So wait a minute. First, what can you do? What is the right behavior you want to achieve? And now let's see how we can use it as an example for others. If you just follow these tips, you will see that you're already making a progress and you're reducing a lot of the initiatives that will not make progress. Now, it's not the subject matter of this webinar, but obviously this is just to reduce the noise, so you can enable yourself to focus on the right things. Focus start with what not to do. Avoid the seductive seven, tempting, easy fix solutions that rarely deal with the core problem. Once you do that, then you're in a position to find the core problem, what forced you, what is pulling you back, that if you can devote enough attention there, you will really move the organization as a whole. Maybe different webinar, we will talk about how in TOC, what tools we're using in order to identify the core problem of an organization and to set the right solution and objectives in order to deal with it. But that's a subject matter of another webinar. So thank you very much. Uwe?
Thank you, Rami. Thank you very much for this presentation. Obviously, we have again some, not only some, a lot of questions, but I tried to burn them down to only 3. So I will ask you 3 questions, and maybe you can give us some hints or answers about that. First question. Given that the company realizes that it is overloaded with initiatives, how can I determine how much initiatives to stop that the rest of initiatives can flow?
So it's not a matter of quantity. It's not a matter of quantity. What I suggest you do is you look at the different types of initiatives. You can use the framework of the Seductive Seven to enable you very quickly to see which ones are not necessarily will make a big progress. And these are the ones that you need to stop and focus on what really makes a difference. Again, if we had a different webinar, we'll talk about how you define the core problem so you can really design an initiative to address it. But for now, just follow the Seductive Seven and you will see that a lot of the initiatives, either you need to correct them or to stop them. It's not a matter of quantity.
Okay, thank you. Second question is maybe a little bit philosophical. As long as we know about theory of constraints, we struggle with focus, especially with what not to do. Why is that? And is there a silver bullet? I assume the a part of the silver bullet is awareness of Seductive Seven. Yeah. And the other one is how to identify the core problem, but maybe there's...
I think you answered it.
Okay. I'm quite happy that I'm able to answer such questions. So the last one, the core
again,
problem...
of course, I'm not saying it's easy. You know, until we always say easy and simple is not the same thing.
Yeah, I see.
But if it was easy, you wouldn't need management.
Okay, the last question. A core problem seems to be the tendency to blame. So how to overcome that? So
there are 2 ways that I would recommend to avoid the blame game when we do the core problem. 2 ways, and it's really has to do with the way you define core problem. So the first one, again, and it's not the subject of this webinar, but what we normally do today when we define core problems, we define them as a vicious cycle. So I would never go to the company and say, okay, the problem is the design department. It's like throwing myself into the wall if I do that. So I will instead try to talk about how the fact that they are so overloaded with so many designs coming from the increase in the variety of designs and the rework that comes to their desk, how this brings them into a vicious cycle that they take upon themselves more and more assignments, moving to bad multitasking, spreading attention more thin, therefore having even more rework, and the backlog taking more time with each design. And that's why the backlog increases, and then they have a vicious cycle. When you explain a problem as a vicious cycle, and maybe that will be a subject of a nice webinar, how you define vicious cycles, you're not blaming anybody, because you're saying, look, it's the core problem, it's like a whirlpool. It keeps you where you are, okay? It's a dynamic that is causing it, that it's feeding itself, and therefore it's not because of you. It's not that it's your fault, okay? It's feeding itself already. Okay, that's why we're using a vicious cycle. You can see online a lot of examples of such vicious cycles. Another way to define core problem without blaming is to define it as a conflict. So again, you're not blaming anybody, but you say you're between a hard and a rock and a hard place. So, but that's again not for this webinar. It's too much.
Okay, Rami, thank you very much. If I heard right, you said that there could be 3 more webinars. The first one is on business innovation. The second one is
people would like
how identify a core problem, and the third one is how to define a vicious cycle. I think we will talk about it in the next days, whether we can do it or not.
In POC, we work on pools, so if people want, we can talk, and we're not going to push. So, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rami. Thank you very much. Thank you all for attending this webinar. Have a good day or a good night. Bye. Thank you.